Hello and welcome to another edition of Life Made Easier podcast. My name is Lesley. I am so pleased that you're here. Today, obviously, like other days, I have a really, I think she's an exceptional guest. I'm going to use the word exceptional. Some of the things that she's going to be sharing with us during this podcast really had made me, it really took me back a little bit. It made me, appreciate life, and it made me appreciate who I am, and it really helped me in a great deal to be able to say, you know what, Lesley, you are not the only one that went through times in your life that were incredibly challenging, that you didn't think you were going to get through, that you're hiding yourself out because because you feel like you're so fragile, and you can put yourself out there again. In other words, she gave me the hope to be able to say, I'm not the only one. Not the only one, right? Because sometimes we feel like we're the only one that ever went through certain things. And while a lot of us out there, it's rare that we get through these things, right? And we survive through them. That's what makes us not weak. And we don't have to hide from it, but it gives us the strength to be able to stand out, to help those people behind us that are coming along the same path, so that it gives them perhaps maybe what they need to be one of those 1% like you are and I am in their situations. So her name is Cindy Daly, and she is a former teacher. She taught for 25 years. She's also an author. She wrote a book called Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. We've talked a little bit about it, and I think that there's going to be some really insightful things through this discussion. And she also, suffered some things in her life, almost much like I did, in similar aspects. And she's still here too, right? We're both here still together. So, in other words, this is really what gave me that extra encouragement that we can get through just about anything. Let's take it away, Cindy, and thank you so much for joining me today. I truly, truly, truly do appreciate your time, and I'm really excited for people to hear about your story because, much like mine, it's not exact, but some of the things mirrored each other. But I think that the intention of it is to give others hope.
Yeah. Hi, Lesley.
Hi.
Like you said, I was a teacher for a long time. I come from a very small island in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. And I grew up in a culture that was different, I guess, from what most people are accustomed to. We had spoken earlier a bit about the fact that sometimes we go through things in life, and like you and I are kindred spirits because we both have gone through things that most people probably would never experience in their life, and yet we're still here. And we're doing things that most people would not even consider doing because they would say, well, no. It's either that's not me or I can do it. It's just I don't have time. And maybe if I can fit it in, I can do this or do that. But then sometimes it comes down to a simple thing called faith. And we're talking about faith. And faith for many people can be like the fallback in a lot of things, in that I want to do something and I have faith in it and I have faith I can do it and I believe I can do it. But then you always have a backup plan. Like we were talking about earlier, you always have a backup plan in that, well, I will do this. Yes, I'm going to believe in something and I'm going to do it and I'm going to have faith and I'm going to put my best foot forward and I'm going to trust in a higher being and I'm going to do all these things. But in case things don't go the way that I think or doesn't happen in my timeline, then, I could always do this instead. And on the flip side, sometimes when we don't put ourselves out or we don't have a true belief in things changing or anything happening, we always fall back on, well, maybe it wasn't supposed to happen, or maybe God didn't want, or a higher being, or whoever you call it, didn't want us to get through this, maybe it wasn't supposed to be. But faith is very important. And to me, in my whole life, what I've noticed and what I've seen, even though I came from a different religion, initially I grew up
Yeah, I think that that's really important because that's where I really liked your story because of the schools that start in the very beginning because you really had quite the diverse, you have the, I want to say diverse setting for you to really, I think, started building the foundations of the perspective that you hold. So if we could just go back to the very beginning of your school years
Okay,
and I
yeah.
think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I grew up in my country is very multicultural in that there are a lot of different religions, a lot of different cultures, a lot of different traditions and beliefs. And at the time I grew up, when I was young and I was growing up, there were like set standards and like traditional behaviors and things you were allowed to do and things you weren't allowed to do according to your religion or your family background or your neighborhood or where you came from. And
Now,
in
is
my
that what
case,
separated that because there's so many cultures and religions and beliefs? Did you find that it depended on the neighborhood that you believed in? Is that how you knew your place, or was there a place that you had to know existed to keep you in your box?
well, according to your religions, when we were growing up, and now it is a lot more expanded and it is a lot more inclusive and it's a lot more open. But at that time, it was like, you had to stick very closely to your religious beliefs, and whether it was in the way you dressed, the people you went out with, even if you can go out, because in my case, I grew up Hindu, and you're not allowed to date other people. You're not allowed to have boyfriends. You're not allowed to go out on dates, and things like that. You couldn't go out on dates. You couldn't do those sort of things or whatever because that was frowned on, and you were seen as a loose person, or you had no morals, and you were condemned actually for talking to boys.
But how did they end up finding a spouse or whatever? Was it like an arranged marriage or something?
No, I wouldn't say rebellious. I would just say I had my own point of view about things, and that most of my friends growing up, my best friends actually were boys.
But then what you're saying is that from your when you were younger in that perspective, you weren't allowed to talk to boys. But then how did people come together if
Well,
they
no,
weren't allowed
like
to communicate? I mean, how did you? I mean, I guess it
through
doesn't really
school.
matter.
No, like through school and stuff like that and thing. It wasn't like you lived in a community and you went to temple and you went to schools, and like I went to a mixed primary school, elementary school, and so you knew boys and it was okay then, but as you got older, it was like, having a friendship with a boy, nobody could understand. You couldn't be friends with a boy. They saw it as if you were talking to a boy, there was some intention or something wrong was going on. And like even in the temple, like the females and the males sat separate. You can talk, but like there was always like adults around and stuff like that and thing. In my case, and like we went to school, but like the school, like there were mixed high schools, and I went to an all girls high school, right? But there was an all boys high school next door, and some of the people who you knew, like your friends and thing, probably had brothers, or sometimes you go to the library and you bump up people and you talk to them, and like you probably had friends that you knew from your neighborhood or from growing up in primary school who went to high schools around the area, so that way you had friends. But in terms of like it wasn't seen that you couldn't really have like a friend who was a boy in certain religions, like outside. And so it's okay when you go to school to talk to boys, and if you go to the library to talk to boys, but it was like you weren't supposed to have that. Was in social setting. You weren't allowed when you were at home to have a boy call you, or have a boy visit you, or go out on dates and stuff like that, because then you were a bad person.
So that you had a girls' high school and a boys' high school, and that was
Yeah.
just the way it was. Is it still
No,
like
they
that
were mixed
today?
schools. So no, yeah, actually there are like some of the high schools are run by like board schools. They're run by churches or by different religions have their schools, and like some are all girls schools and some are all boys schools, and then we have the mixed school otherwise, government schools and stuff like that that are mixed with boys and girls in them. So It
So
has
the
grown.
government run schools, or let's say the city or the public schools, let's say this public schools.
Yeah, public schools. Yeah.
The public schools are both male and female, right? But where
Yeah.
the private schools now are
Tend to
just
be
the
more
boy and the
either
girl.
boys or girls. Yeah, they're
Okay.
segregated in that
Okay.
sense, right?
Okay. And then you were saying that when you were growing up, when we had our interview, you were talking about how there was a diverse amount of religions, the girls or the people, the kids,
Yeah.
they all came from different beliefs and different backgrounds.
Yeah, because like when we go to school, like even though school is run by like I went to a Presbyterian school, which is a church-run school, and it wasn't.
But then, if you're going to a Presbyterian school,
yeah,
it's a Hindu culture.
Yeah, you see, they didn't segregate it like that, in that the school may be run by a church or a religious organization, but anybody can attend the school. We had an exam that you wrote, and once you get the qualifications, and once you had reached that grade or past that certain point, and you pass, or like we said, okay, you got entry into the school, you could attend the school. And that school had, when I attended my high school, there were like people from all different religious backgrounds, ethnicities, things like that. So it was like a mixed club, which was very, very good actually, in the sense that you mix with everybody and you make go. And some of my closest friends, they weren't Hindus. They didn't belong to the same race as the ethnicity as I do. They didn't have the same like background as I did. But up to today, they still remain some of my closest friends.
Now, do you find that the difference in religion or the difference in belief systems, did you often discuss these things between you, and do you think that it broadened your perspective on life? How do you think, I guess I should put it this way, how do you feel that the different beliefs and the different cultures that were all combined in the school system when you grew up, how do you think that, did it have an effect?
Actually, I think it is a good thing when we put different religions and ethnicities and backgrounds together.
How do you think it improved how do you think that if in fact you guys discussed it and such, how did that really affect you, or how did that?
It does, like I was coming to that, in that we do broaden your perspective, because you begin to see you see a lot of different religions. And even in my country, and like I told you, there were a lot of like different religions and stuff like that. And when you grew up in a community, you had all this around you. And so we had a way of participating in everybody else's religion. And look, because you knew about it and you participated in it. And in high school, and even when I was teaching, we took part in every single religious festival, because there was such a mixed culture and a mixed, the population is so mixed. And it does broaden your perspective in terms of religion, in terms of belief, in terms of what you see beyond what you grew up in. And that you realize that, okay, that everybody else sees how they view their higher being or their God a certain way and things like that. And you learn more about their practices and their beliefs and where their religions come from and where their values come from. And now while people do hold on to, like, you do keep your religious beliefs intact, they are a lot more open to accepting. They're like, everybody else has a different religion, and they inculcate some of the practices, even the foods and the clothes and the language sometimes, or the cultural activities. They also incorporate that, because in Trinidad, it's like we have Hindus, Muslims, Christians of different sections. You might have Presbyterian, Catholics, Anglicans, Baptists, and stuff like that. And we all take part in festivals, because if it's Diwali, everybody would dress up in the Indian. Diwali is a Hindu festival, right? And everybody would dress up in the East Indian apparel. They would wear makeup. Some people even learn to dance Indian dance, and they learn to, like, when they are like businesses and stuff have like celebrations for these with the particular traditions that come with it. Everybody goes and they attend. It doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are. Everybody would go and participate, and they cook the same food and they eat the same way. So it's like it's a culture that is very, very mixed here. So whether it's you're a Hindu, people participate in Diwali. Whether you're a Muslim, people participate in Eid. Whether you're a Christian, there is Easter and Christmas and things like that. So people do participate in everything, and it does broaden you. And
I was going to ask you that. How do you feel? How do you see that this has truly broadened the perspective of people? And because one of the things that I'm thinking about right now is this. In the United States, while there's a lot happening that I completely agree with and I'm very, very grateful for, right, that's happening, one of the things that I'm a little concerned about, that I'm concerned about is making the United States just a Christian country, just a Christian faith-based country, when we're a melting pot of everything, right? And I just, while Christianity is the strongest or the main religion here, right? I think that just like Hinduism is the foundational, I'm sure, the largest part of faith where you grew up, but then it had these other little things. And I truly believe that you need those extra pieces so that you fully understand. And I can really see both sides of why people, why President Trump now wants to make it just a Christian-based country. But then I can also see that we're a melting pot, we're a melting pot. And from my own personal experience, I can say that when I was looking for God in my life, right, when I was searching long and hard, I explored many different faiths, many different avenues, different belief systems. I mean, I was thinking about believing in, I would have believed a rock. Like if you'd have said, do something, I was that desperate. If you'd have told me to go find this certain rock and it would give you all I was there, right? Like I was getting desperate. But what I can tell you, and when I visited different faiths, different churches, different temples and such, like the Sikh temple here isn't far from my home. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful traditions, ceremonies in many of the faiths, many of the religions, and one of the things that I can guarantee is and what I was looking for, right? But is on the faces of very few that attended these certain religious facilities, very few had that look on their face, right? You know that look that they know God, they know their Creator. There's that look. Very few have it. I mean, it's the most peaceful, the most happy, the most connected. It's like a beautiful look, right? I just can't even explain it, where the majority of them don't, right? But it's that look that those people, and you just know if they've got that on the outside, just imagine what's bubbling on inside of them, right? What's going on underneath inside of them. And so, but I wanted that feeling that I knew they had, and I didn't, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. But I can tell you now that I have found it, and to tell you that I found it within me, right? I can also guarantee and confirm that it took the knowledge from every single one of those churches, every single one of those belief systems. It took an understanding of the broader perspective, right? For me to truly understand and find it in here. I couldn't find it when I went to just the Catholic Church or just the Lutheran Church or just the LDS Church or just the Jewish Church or just, the Sikh or just Mile High or just whatever, Grace Chat, whatever, right? I couldn't find it in one specific place. I mean, I found him, but not here, right? I could see that it was there. I couldn't find it in here. But when I sat down and when I realized that it was in here, I realized that it came because I had learned so much about all of them and taken from them each what resonated within me. And then I'd move on. And it was like I was just picking up all these little pieces of a puzzle maybe and sticking them together so that I could find my own personal faith, that I knew that faith that would carry me through. Because I can honestly say, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be where I am today. If I hadn't have had that experience, I would not. I wouldn't have the faith that I do today, and I certainly would not be to be inside who I am today if I hadn't had those.
I think sometimes what we do is like in Trinidad, I guess you could say the major piece is Christian, but like we have Hindus, we have Muslims, there are a lot of different religions in Trinidad.
So Christianity is stronger than Hinduism?
But I can't say now because people have like, if you look at it as it's not stronger, and I guess what you're looking at is in terms of the people who kind of like, if you want to do it on a religious basis or whatever, and say, okay, that there are more Hindus or more Christians or whatever in a country, I guess in our country, the slight majority that, if you look at it, Christians might be the slight majority. But you also have a strong Hindu, Muslim, and the Christianity is divided into different, like I told you, sectors, whether you're Presbyterian, Pentecostal, there is Catholic, Roman Catholic, Anglicans, and stuff like that. So, but all the religions understand each other. And yes, of course, there are going to be people who are like dogmatic and, these types who are very, very strict and they believe only in that or whatever, and they're not accepting. But overall, I would say that most people here are very accepting of each other's religions and beliefs and stuff like that. They may not sometimes want it in their families, but they do accept a lot of people. And there's a lot of intermarriages and intermingling and stuff like that in terms of friendship, and people do business together and stuff like that. So it is a good foundation, I guess, if you want to look at things on a broader scope, because it's only sometimes, like you mentioned, it's only by learning about other things that sometimes you find little pieces that fit in you. Because remember, your faith is not a one-size-fits-all.
Right.
One-size-fits-all. And like somebody asked me yesterday, they said, well, when you talk about faith, as in believing in something, and as in, having this idea of something, a supernatural higher power, I don't quite believe that. I don't quite think along the same lines of what faith is. And they said, well, but we all have different opinions. And I said, yes, we all have different perspectives of what we think faith is. But when you look at faith, all that faith does is it just asks you to believe and have a sense of knowing that there is something that exists that is higher than you and me, that is really in control of everything, because we came into a ready-made world. We didn't create oceans. We didn't create air. We didn't create the sun. We didn't create anything. We got a ready-made world, right? And we got everything that we see in creation, whether it's animals or the landscape or anything, even ourselves. We got that ready-made. We don't go to a store and pick out this, okay, I want this color eyes, I want this color hair. Well, maybe people can do it now, with plastic surgery and things like that, right? But, we don't go and say this one, right? Yeah, right. But, initially, we don't get to do that. And how we come is what our bodies look like. But each of us are given an individual mind. We each are given that distinct, unique gift of having a mind. And a mind which is different from our brain. Our mind is different. Our mind can process things. Our mind can make rational things, make irrational thoughts. Our minds can fluctuate with emotions. We can do a lot of things, right? But when we come down to faith, and I always tell people, why can't you not have faith? You breathe, right? Can you see the air? You could only see the air if it's emotion, right? But the air is there. Did you tell your body, okay, you have to pull air into your nose and put it into your lungs, and then your lungs have to take it, and then all the little cells in your body have to take it and circulate it around. They have to extract this air and take it and circulate it around all your veins, and, give life to your whole body. How did your body know it needed air to live? Nobody told your body that. You didn't tell your body that even. So you have to have faith in something that exists outside of what you can see.
Right.
You know, and when you see a leaf moving in the air, does something tell that leaf when to drop off the tree? Does it tell it when to sprout on a branch? No, it doesn't. These things are all, and you have the same way, you have to have faith in the fact that something, whether you want to believe in God or not, and whatever form you want to see Him, you have to have an idea as a rational, logical person that there is something that is unknown, that is outside of your power, that can control things that you can't.
You know, there was something that I read on your profile, and it said, I'm going to read it to you. Heaven help me, I cry out loud, from amidst the colossal crowd. How can one voice be heard? Will anyone heed the spoken word? Maybe just one. You want to explain that one? I think it fits right here. I think it fits in incredibly well. I think this is a perfect time to add that
I
in.
just wrote that spontaneously because, like I said, I write what comes into my head. I don't really plan what I write sometimes, you know. And that came from, sometimes, you know, you so want to help. You so want, sometimes when you've seen things and you look at things and you look at all around you and you keep thinking, everything is so noisy, it's so crowded, and there are all these people angling to get their voices heard. And social media, and then you have the news, and then you have normal crowds around you, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody has a take on something. You can't say one word without getting 10 opinions.
Right.
And sometimes all you want to say with that one word is, and you may think sometimes you're going through this massive battle of trying to get your voice heard, or trying to put something across to people, or to show something that is basic, and that maybe, you know, you want to show people that there is much more than this big crowd, and there's much more to them, and that they are more nevertheless, and you don't have to keep fighting everybody else to get ahead. And maybe that's why I said, and maybe there's just one person, one voice who would listen, and that one voice is that shred of hope you have, that there will be one person who you can affect and who you can help in your lifetime.
Who do you think that is?
I think it can be. You see, that's what we don't know. And that's why we have to keep reaching out to people, because everybody has needs in a different way. And
I think that what you were just talking about, you know, we have this one person that we can affect. But I think that that one person that must first and foremost be affected is we ourselves, right? Me, myself, and I. Because when I take that to me is like taking responsibility for myself, my life, what I believe, making certain that I understand it's my life, it's about me, for me, and because of me. And I say that all the time. People look at me, Leslie, that's selfish. Well, no, selfishness or not, let me tell you what. When I lived my life for everybody around me, and I fell apart and needed those people, and they left me, and you're going to be sitting there, and one day you're going to be sitting there, and there's going to be nobody around you. There's going to be nothing inside of you, because you're going to ask yourself, who am I? And there's going to be, you have no idea what that means, because you haven't spent any time building in here. And then you say, well, why am I here? And the people that you were doing all this stuff for are gone. You say, I don't know.
No, it's like,
that's scary.
No, like when you say selfish and people say like, okay, you see, there's a difference between, people talk about selfish in the sense that you want everything for yourself, or you want to get ahead.
That's the same as.
But selfish, but when you focus on yourself, you're not being selfish. It depends on what you focus on. And I have always told everybody, it is okay to be selfish sometimes, because you as a person have value to yourself, right? How often do we give ourselves the same consideration and the same compassion that we give to other people? I
I've
could say
actually had to learn it. I've had to learn it, but I started learning it when I was like 50, and I'll be 58 on on May 17th. But it took me until I was 50 to figure that out, right? That you have to do that, and I know that there's if I'm there, I don't know if you were there too. Yeah. And that's part of what happened, because I want to transition into what you experienced, but I'm wondering how much of that could have played a role in it too. And what I'm trying to get to, I think that the point that I'm trying to make is this. It takes a variety of information. It takes the different aspects of every culture, every faith, every religion, everything that makes up humanity. It takes an understanding of why we're all here and what we're all here for. Why are we? But then it also comes down to, why are we here and what for? Who am I? Why am I here? If we have to ask that on a micro, individual level, and look at it from a macro, broad level, right? I think that puts a lot of ease. Do you think? I mean, I think it really makes things a lot easier, because to me it means I'm not stuck with these few choices and these few decisions, right? I have all of this that I get to choose from. And I don't have to pick one or the other. I can pick half of this and half of that, or a quarter of this and 3/4 of that. We're all here as unique people, and we have to really appreciate that about each other, right? But at the same time, we have to build what makes us unique from here, from the inside. I feel like I'm rambling. I don't mean to be rambling. I have this vision in my head, and I know what I'm trying to say, because you went through a situation in your life where you kind of, your body's short-circuited, right? Your body kind of short-circuited. And for me, it was mentally and emotional. My body's short-circuited. But a lot of this, there's some things that are very similar that I see that I remember in your story. That was very similar to me. But I think that what brought you through it is the foundation that you had before it happened, right? And for me, it was I mean, and that's what made it. But for me, it was, I had to burn up the past, right? And I had to start all over. I mean, God hit that reset button, boom, Leslie, and He got rid of everything. He took out the trash. God incinerated everything, right? I mean, it was all I could think of was Hiroshima, a bomb, just it was like Noah. It was like Noah's Ark. God flooded my life, and I don't know, burnt stuff up, flooded. I don't care. He just wiped everything out. And I was speaking to a friend of mine earlier today, and he was saying, Leslie, before you can start healing forward, what did it take? And that's what I call healing forward, right? From that point on, I start healing forward. And he said, what had to happen first? And I said, I had to make room for it. He said, Leslie, you had to take your trash out. And I sat there and I thought, oh my God, he's right. Because you had to take your trash out, Leslie, because all that stuff, you had to get rid of it so that you could start from a certain specific place so that you could start moving forward. And I was like, oh my God, yes. And I'm looking at him he's turn all these little light bulbs on in my head like a Christmas tree, right? And I'm like, yeah. It's just like that slight little reminder. But with me, I need to start way over. Right? I need to. He said, you had to really start over.
I think that's what happens when something traumatic happens in our lives.
Well, what happened is that the foundation of your existence, and what I'm talking about is the different faiths, the different religions, the acceptance, the calm. That is something that got me through. That's something I've learned that got me through and built me to where I am now, right? Whereas that's something that you had in the beginning, And I think that that's what saved you to go through.
Yeah, because in my case, it was like I got a lot of, I guess, obstacles and ostracism and criticism from young. So, you kind of like when you step outside of traditional or your home environment and you express things that are not accepted or you behave a certain way that is not fitting. In my case, in that I began.
Start with that whole story.
All right. Like I told you, I grew up and things were different. And I was like, I read a lot and I would look at people and I ask a lot of questions. Don't tell me, do as I say, not as I do. Or don't tell me, honesty is the best policy and you shouldn't lie to people. And yet I'm seeing you doing it. And then I would come and I'll say, no, I'm young. And I'm going to say, well, but I thought you said, don't tell somebody something, and yet you did it. No. You just have to listen to what I say. Don't ask me any questions. And I would be like, okay. And then, like, I would listen and I would do things. Because I remember when I was small, like, there was this neighbor who we had who was blind. And I wanted to know what it was like to be blind. So at my grandparents' home now, there's an upstairs step, and you come down, and there was a post at the bottom that had a nail on it, and the bottom was like open space. So I don't know why I got it in my 8-year-old head to try at the top of the step to try to see what it was like to be blind. I just wanted to know what it was like to be blind. So I started coming down the step, walking down the step, eyes closed, and I slipped off the edge of the step, and I hit the edge of the post, and there was a nail on it, and I actually had this scar still on my head where I slipped, and I got cut right here over my right eye. And everybody was like screaming, and there was a whole set of blood and whatever, And then afterwards, they said, why did you do that for? Why did you close your eyes? And I said, I just wanted to see what it's like to be blind. And everybody's looking at me like, you mad? Something wrong with you? I said, because the neighbor was mad and he was blind, and I just wanted to see what it was like to not be able to see. And this was me being curious.
To look at somebody, I think that that's interesting because what it tells me is that you wanted to know what another person's perspective, you wanted to see things from another person's perspective.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do. And like, I remember looking up and I said, well, it was dark, and nobody wanted to hear it was dark. All I heard was that, that I don't listen, and I always like doing my own thing, and and I have to stop doing all these crazy things, whatever. But I just kept being, and I realized that as I grew older, I like looking at things my way, in that if I told the truth and if I was the way I was, then I don't have to lie. I don't have to pretend to be somebody I'm not. You know what I mean? And then when I was 16 years old, like in our temple, especially in our religion, right? Girls, especially females, like females sit on one side, males sit on one side. Females could only do certain things in the temple. And so at that time, you couldn't read a lot of books, and you didn't have internet and like access to where you can go online and read all the religious texts and stuff, right? And you only you didn't have access to a lot of like religious texts. But the guy who ran the temple, the manager of the temple, he liked me, and we would talk, and like he would sometimes give me books that he had, and I would read. And when I was 16, he, like, on Sunday, like, normally the pundit or an older man, a religious elder man would do the service, right? 16-year-old girls did not do the service, especially ones who had mouth like mine. You did not do the service. And he came up, and he wasn't feeling good. And he said, he gave me a religious book, and he said, Cindy, read this, and I want you to do the sermon. And I was like, what? I mean, there are people who are older than me. They are men. There are people who probably know more about it than me. And so he said, no, I want you to do it. So I read it. And then when it was time, like after they did all the prayers and all the singing and stuff like that, and it came time for the sermon, he called me. And you could have heard a pin drop because this wasn't heard of in the temple. A 16-year-old young girl who always asking questions and never listened to anybody. She's going to come up here and read sermon for us. Now, mind you, I was the youth group leader, and I used to sing in the temple, and I was very religious, so And I came up and I did it, and like people were surprised actually, and they said, it was really, really good, and they heard something that they didn't hear before the way I explained it, because I gave my own interpretation to it. So afterwards, now, like I asked the man, and I said, well, why did you ask me of all people to do it? There were so many people. But he said, because I know that you wouldn't put something on it that wasn't there, and you would read it and you would explain it how you saw it, because you would see it how it was meant to be written. And I said, okay. And at the same time now, while people were telling me it was really good and they were so proud of me, there were also people who were saying, why did she have to do it? How come you let her do it and stuff like that? And there was also, you got like the flash of people criticizing you at the same time, in that I said too much. I didn't really know what I'm talking about. It wasn't right that I should be up there talking that I'm a girl and that he should never have given me that position and stuff like that and thing. So my response to everybody was that next time, if something comes up, you do it. And I will hear what you have to say and I will learn from you. And I was 16 years old. And after that now, it kind of like, it happened that after that, like every other week, once the pundit wasn't there or when somebody wasn't there, I would do the sermon until I was 20 years old. I did that, and so like I did things that a lot of people never did, and it was frowned upon. And I learned about hypocrisy, and I learned about people saying one thing and doing one thing behind your back and stuff like that and thing, and even in families it happens, because my family criticized me for saying so much and knowing so much and actually doing it. And that's how I learned to like go through it and to like see everything and to face everything and to get my own perception in that. If somebody who is more learned than me and who is older thought that I was capable of doing this, while everybody else thought no, and criticized me just based on the fact of how I look or my age or my sex or the fact that I had a different opinion and I expressed things differently, then I would learn to see things through my own eyes because it was good. And that's how I learned to like come into my own self and to do things and to not bother about other people. Because ultimately when it came down to it, it was like, it's either I choose to be like everybody else, kind of shortchange who I was and my own thinking and my own beliefs and my own values and sense of what makes me me. I chose to be me. And when I was 21, like I told you, when I was 21, like it was a choice in that my husband and I had known each other from primary school, and we met and stuff like that. And I was teaching and he was teaching because I started teaching at the time. And we met up and we started talking and we liked each other. And we decided, and when my parents found out, it was like, okay, there were arranged marriages at that time. Maybe this still happen nowadays, right? But at that time, there were arranged marriages and stuff like that. And I said, no, I'm not going to get married. The only way I'm going to get married is if I get married to somebody I love, which is highly unlikely because it didn't happen then, right? That kind of thing growing up, that's what I said. You also had this attitude, right? And they said, no, you don't have to have love. When you get married, I said, listen, I'm going to get married is if I love someone. And if I choose that person, I'm not going to get married. And then I met my husband and we decided to get married. And they realized that I was very serious. And they told me, well, it's either, they didn't approve of him at all. And they told me it was either him or them because they didn't like him. He wasn't Hindu and things like that and stuff or whatever. And I said, well, listen, I don't have to live with you for the rest of my life. And this is the person I choose to live with for the rest of my life. And from the time I was 21, that was it. I got disowned and I never had contact with them in over 37 years. Still.
So you still have not talked to your parents?
They probably died. I have no idea. Because you gave me a choice and you didn't want or whatever. And I said, okay, fine. Because if this is what you cut me out of your life and things or whatever. And from that, I found out that was really a lesson to let me be me, because I learned, even though it did hurt and it was hard, because you lost all your families, you lost all your friends and things like that, but the choice that I made. But I said, but this is the right choice for me, so I will stick by my choice. This is the choice I made.
Were you an only child?
No, I had 7 brothers and sisters.
And have you spoken to any of them?
Nope, none of them spoke to me. None of them supported me. None of them did anything. And they never took my side and said, okay, this was right or whatever. None of them. And 5 of them were older than me. But like I said,
And you haven't spoken to anyone?
Nope.
See, I have to tell you, I did the same thing when I was 40, when I went through this healing thing, and I had to say, okay, Lesley, what is benefiting you and what is not benefiting you? And I gave up my entire family, including my kids, because of, and it's a long thing, right? And slowly they are coming back into my life, but I get that, where you just have to freaking get rid of everybody. And you need to start over. And the right ones come back, and because the ones that don't come back stay away.
Yeah, because the thing is, if you tell me it's a choice between that and that.
Right.
Why? And I don't beg, and I'm not going to compel anybody, and I'm not going to chase anybody. I've always said that. I said, if this is put in my path and I'm given this choice and I choose, I will stand by my choice. Because you put me in a position where it was either this or that. There was no middle ground.
Right.
So I chose my path. And my path led me for 33.5 years. That is how long my husband and I were married for. And we remained married, and we went through everything together. We worked hard. We progressed in life. We got our house. We had 2 fantastic children, right? Who are fully grown, and they are married, and they're really good. And my husband and I had a good long life together. Yes, we had ups and downs like most married couple and things like that and stuff. But I can say at the end of the day that I liked my choice. I'm good with the choice that I made. And the fact that none of them sought to contact me, none of them even obliquely reached out to me, whilst my husband was alive, mind you, right? And some of them live in the same country with me, which is a small country, actually. But like I said, I'm not casting blame on anybody or expressions. I'm perfectly fine with it, because from the time you wrote me off and said, well, this is your choice and we have nothing to do with you again, as far as I'm concerned, that door was closed. So right. I'm gone. I'm done.
Yeah. What about his family? Was his family... Was his family still... I mean, his family welcomed you?
Okay, that is something kind of different. And that, well, his family were there because, like, he was the oldest, and we were with his family were there. And I loved his father. His father was a fantastic man. He was the sweetest, nicest man I have ever met in my life, right? He was really, really nice. And his brothers and sisters were much younger, so we helped them when we were teaching and stuff like that. We helped them through, until they were grown up and stuff like that. And they were good, and we have all of them progress and move, and a lot of them live away now, But when my husband died, I was the one who was ill. Remember, I told you, like in 2010, I got ill. I lost 4 years of my life. My body got a lot of illnesses, not me. My body got a lot of illnesses. And I lost 4 years of my life in a form of illness and flatlining and things that, nobody ever thought I would recover from. And I was in a wheelchair. And then my husband got ill in 2011. And in a short period of like 2 months and 3 weeks, he died. And a few days after he died, one of his relatives asked me, why didn't you die instead?
I really feel sorry for that person, because I'm telling you what, karma's real. And for somebody to be that insensitive, it's just sad.
And what happened is that as of that time, none of his relatives, his brothers and sisters, have kept in contact with me. None of them talk to me. And that has been over 2 years and more.
Have you reached out to them?
After that, I gave it some time and stuff like that. And then Christmas in 2022, I did reach out to them, because I said, listen, everybody goes through a grieving period. And, it told many people the fact that I am still here is something a lot of people don't understand, because I'm the one who has all these illnesses still. And I'm the one who went through all this stuff, and yet I'm still here. And he got sick for a very short time, and he died. And, I do understand that he was their older brother and they loved him, and he was very helpful because we helped, like I told you, we helped every one of them growing up, in different ways financially and whatever they wanted to do, and we supported them and things. And I said, whatever. So Christmas, I tried calling everybody, nobody answered. Then I said, okay, I'm gonna do this one more time, and I sent a message. I texted each of them, and none of them replied. And I said, okay, God, I did my part. I reached out. It's up to them. And if they don't, then that's a chapter in my life I'm going to close off. But at least I know to myself that I forgave them for whatever they thought, whatever they said. I forgave them. And it's, because I don't really care what people think about me. Because I said, I know myself, and I don't know why I am still here. If anybody wants to know, ask God, because I never thought to ask him. I don't know why I still breathe, and I don't really want to know why I got through all those things. I don't want to know why I got ill. I don't want to know why all these things happened to me. All I know is that I'm still here, and I live by the grace of God. And I just let them go, and I said, well, let them do whatever they want to do. I just bless them, and I wish them all the best. And I'm good. Because my peace of mind is better than worrying about people who probably won't even spend half a second worrying about you. So I said, listen, I'm going to stay where I am happy and where I am content and where I am at peace with myself, because I know that you can't change people and it's up to them. And I did what I could. I did the best I could do. I reached out, and if that's how it is, then let it be. I'm not going to fight.
I like what you said about, being ostracized, having that family rejection and different things because you were different. I mean, I experienced the same thing when I was younger, and it's hard, but you don't understand. I mean, it seems like everybody else is speaking their mind, and when you do, it's wrong, right? I didn't ever really get that. But one of the things that really stands out to me is when you said, I've gotten to the point where I'm okay with it. But see, that was like 30-something years ago, right? That it happened. Let's talk about, if you can remember, when you were like right there, right? Because I think that the hindsight, I mean, one of the greatest things I've heard lately that I've really taken to heart for me, right, is that we learn life looking back or glancing back, right? And putting the pieces together. Unfortunately, we live life moving forward. So, I think that really kind of, with the polarity there, it really makes us understand that, trying to be in a neutral position for things. But also, I wanted to talk about, like, 35 years ago, you don't have the same attitude and the same perspective now because, I mean, over the time, a lot of things have happened within you, right? But what I'm really curious about is there are people that are where you were, that are being rejected from their families, that are being ostracized, that are being disowned, but these people aren't speaking to you anymore, right? Because I was there too. But what do you say to them? Like, what would you say to your younger self? Or if you saw somebody going through what you went through before, what could you tell them? Like, what was it like? How can you relate to them and then, like, give them hope?
What you have to tell them is that
I mean, what would you do? Like, how were you feeling in the beginning when it really actually all happened?
When it happened, like, I was confused, to be honest with you, in that. But then I said, you know what? This is a choice. I got to make the choice. And I made the choice, and it did hurt because this is like, remember, this is like your family. These are the people you grew up with. These are people who have been in my life for 21 years. This was my environment. This was my home. And then suddenly now you're telling me that either I do this or it's cut off.
What gave you that strength? Where did you find that strength?
To be honest with you, it had been coming over the years with everything that had happened to me. And I remember when I was like 16 years old, yeah, I had gotten into a really, really bad argument with my family because, like, we write pen pals, right? A long time ago, like you had pen pals you could write to, actually write, not like email or text or whatever, who lived all over the country. Right. And pen pals were a big thing, right? And I remember I was in high school and like you would write letters to them and you would post it, put a stamp on it and post it. And then like weeks later or whoever, you get letters from all your pen pals, boys and girls, about from all over the world. And I had pen pals like from England and Australia and the US and, Canada and France and all these countries. I had a lot of pen pals that I would write to. And, the letters would come home. And then I had and nobody bothered because these were pen pals, and even though it was boys and girls I was writing to, it didn't matter because, they were pen pals. They were, people, and like my pen pals would send me pictures of themselves, and it wasn't anything to like my family and my parents, right? Mm-hmm. And then a friend of mine was going to study a friend of mine, as in a local friend in Trinidad who I knew, was going to study in the United States. He was going to study medicine. And he said, you can write to me. And he gave me his address. And no, I didn't think anything of it because, we were 16, but this was just a friend, and he was going away to study. And, we just write to each other and just keep in contact and see I write to everybody else. So I started writing and he would write back. And we kept doing that for a little while. Nobody thought anything of it. Because, it was letters coming back and forth from different countries. So nobody told it. And I didn't think anything of it because it was like, I was writing to just like anybody else. And my sister, he was 19, but he was a friend, like a friend like I would write to everybody else. And my sister decided to tell my mother because the letters would come home and whilst we were at school. So the letters would come home and my parents would collect the letters, and stuff like that. And then when you come home, you'll get the letter, right? Right. And so my sister decided to tell my mother that the person I was getting the letter from is a boy I knew in Trinidad who was writing to me, who went away to study. And that caused a big fuss. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on because this is like a friend I'm writing to away like everybody else. And I do write to friends in Australia and Canada and the US who are boys also. So what is the problem? And I didn't have a problem with it, because I didn't understand what the fuss was. Maybe I was innocent, maybe I wasn't. I don't understand. But I just said I didn't understand. And there was a big sort of quarreling and carrying on and things like that. And I got tired. And some part of me, something in me just said, you know what? They would think whatever they're going to think, so don't say anything. No, normally I would argue back, And I just said, you know what? No matter what I do, you're going to think of me the way you think of me. And you're going to react the way you do. And I can tell you 101 things you have in your own head what you want to think. And just let it be. And that was me. And from that day on, I just let it go because I said, I realized that I'm trying to explain something to you. And you are not bothering with a word I'm saying.
I get it, and one of the things I'm thinking right now is when you're ostracized and rejected, even by your own family, right? And you just don't feel like you fit in. And we're coming from two different cultures, right? Your culture versus and my culture. But I can tell you when that happened to me, I ran away from home. And I really didn't run away from home. I just didn't go home. Right after school, I didn't go home. I stayed with a friend, with the only really friend I had in high school. I stayed with her family, and I would stay there for like 2 weeks at a time. But my mother would never even call and ask where I was or nothing. Nobody ever inquired. But the only time, I think it was after I was at her house for, I think it was 6 months maybe, right? And I was talking to her family and her parents about it. And I had mentioned that my mom received Social Security for us. kids, right? And they want, and her family really struggled, right? They really struggled. They had like 9 kids in their family, and her mom didn't work, and they just struggled financially. But they had asked my mother, they said, we don't care that she's here, but we would like it if you would help us out, and pay for her. And it was that day that my mother said I had to go home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over money.
Yeah.
It wasn't that she didn't care, but she didn't care about anything else. Like, I could be gone 6 months, it was no problem. But when she had to start being financially responsible for me, then it was a big deal. And to me, that was really, really difficult for me. But I remember my brother, but I was hardly ever home from the time I was like 15 or like 13 to probably 7. I moved out when I was 15, so 13 to 15. But my brother made a comment to me one time. Why, you were never homeless, you were never home. And I remember saying to him, why would you want to be somewhere that you didn't feel safe? Right? Why would I want to be somewhere where I didn't feel safe? And then, but what you're saying is, why would I want to be somewhere where I don't feel understood?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think feeling wanted, feeling safe, feeling accepted, right? Regardless. And doing it just because, and it's out of us being independently who we are, right? You were yourself trying to figure out who you were. I was myself trying to figure out who I was. And it just seems like, I think that's what those generational tendencies, just people like us break them while other people follow them. Do as I say, not as I do.
And the thing is that I did step out, and in that and you see, when I made my choice, I said it's either going to be I keep my word to the person that I choose to live my life with, or I backtrack, and I keep my word. And I said, well, this is the person, this is the situation I'm in. And my husband, he knew about what my parents were, and he knew about everything. And so when we made that choice, we basically lived by ourselves. Yes, we were in contact with his family and stuff like that and thing, but we never lived with anybody. We always rented, we always lived on our own, we always managed everything on our own, even our kids and stuff like that and thing. Like my kids would go and spend like holidays by his parents sometimes and things like that. But they mostly stayed with us. So it was more like a close-knit thing or whatever, because, I, in a sense, in that I wanted my children to not have or not face what I think. So I knew what it was like to be ostracized and to be criticized and to be rejected. So I did not want anyone to go through that again.
Yeah. Tell us really quickly before we have to end this podcast, explain that to everyone about your book. Grief is the price you pay for love.
My book is called Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, what is the most courageous thing you can do? And the most courageous thing you can do is love someone. Because yes, you can climb Mount Everest. Yes, you can do 100 feet bungee jump in a deep canyon or something. But when you love somebody, you give part of yourself and you take part of them into you. And the most courageous thing you can do is love somebody, because you're human. And from the time you begin to love, you know that you can also lose someone, whether it's through separation, whether it's through divorce, whether it's a friendship. Anyway, once you have that love and that attachment, that is what, and when you lose someone, it is not love that is gone. What you really feel is the loss of the person that is gone. So Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. That is a book about how grief affects our lives. And it is my book. It is written by Faye Allian, which is my pseudonym. But it speaks about the things that you go through when you lose someone who you love, right? And it is relevant to whether you lose a job, or whether you lose a friendship, whether you lose a child, whether you lose a pet, whether you have a breakup in a relationship, or whatever. And it's not, what makes my book what it is the fact that it is my story about what I went through when I faced grief, because I thought I was managing. I had things I had to finish up and stuff like that. And then it came crashing down on me, and I realized that I was not managing well with it, and it was inside of me. And if I didn't look at it and face it and then to create space around it, then I would be in this cycle of anguish and keep going down, 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 down. And that's when I decided to look at what exactly grief is and what I was feeling and the turmoil. Because during that, and what you do find when you go through grief is not just the loss that you feel of the person. You do get a myriad of, it is messy, it is emotional, it is raw, it is unfiltered. And you can't say, well, in 2 years' time it's going to be okay. Or, if I follow these steps, it's going to be okay, because that's not how it works. You will find yourself going from up sometimes where you feel you're managing everything and everything is okay, and you can get a day without talking to this person, without thinking about them, or you can, and then the next day you might just be like, you just don't want to get out of bed and you just want to cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And then you have times when you really have to go into yourself and you have to say, well, I have to face this, because you have to accept and you have to agree with the fact that you have a loss in your life.
Right.
And that what you had before is no longer present. And you will feel it in you, but you have to learn to create a space around that. Now, if you have a close connection to someone, and let's say if it's a debt, through that or whatever, right? That is not something you can, even if you lose someone, you break up with someone you had a close contact, you had a close connection with, you can't go in and scrub it out or cut it off and you have a scar and you heal. No. It remains in you, because the memories will always be there. You will see things, you will hear things that remind you of things. And you have to learn to say, okay, this is what I went through. This is what happened. This is how I feel. This, I know, is going to come up now and then and stuff like that. Sometimes it's going to want to crush me. But you have to accept that what is not there anymore is not there. And you have to agree with it, which is most important. You have to agree with the fact that I had this before, it's not here now. I had great memories. I had these times I went through. Yes, we had difficult times. Yes, we had these ups and downs. But instead of you and me, instead of me and somebody else, now it's just me. And I have to realize that I am still present. I am still here. I am still in this moment. I am here. I have to look at myself in this moment and see what I can do, what it is I am still here for. And in that way, you have to sometimes force yourself to look at what exactly is in your life. You might have children you have to take care of. You might have a job you still have to go to. You might have other things to do. And whilst it may seem tedious, just that is enough to let you see that I am here. And then whilst you are doing what seems like, things you have to do, you also have to learn to create space in that. We all go through seasons in life. And sometimes when something is no longer there, I'm not going to say end. I'm going to say when something is no longer there, you have to learn to open up yourself. Because you can't receive anything, or you can't do anything, or you can't become who you are supposed to be if you are a closed door. And if you imprison yourself in a shield, in a sense, of grief, of loss, of hopelessness, of, oh, my life is never going to change, and if you imprison yourself in that, you will never be open to receive what God has, or what your divine Father has for you in store next. Because how can you, if your hands are clasped, how can you hold anything?
Right.
And it's like when you lock yourself up. And that's what I'm saying. And that's what my book is about. It talks about the knowing grief, recognizing it, feeling it, the things you go through when you have to go through. And my book is not clinical. It's not a solution to everything. But what it is a source of comfort and a source of guidance to people who are, and a lot of us have gone through grief, especially with COVID, and especially with things that have happened, and with the changes in health and stuff like that, and all these illnesses that come up. So it is a book that is different, I guess, from most people's writing, in that it also touches on the fact that we question God, and we look at the emotional state of it, we look at the spiritual side of it, in that you said, like, when you go through, like, you feel like if there's nobody with you. and you're in isolation, and you said, God, where are you? Because I don't feel you close to me anymore. And you feel lost, and you keep calling out, and you are suffering, and you're in all this pain, and you don't understand. I mean, you were there for me before. Why have you left me? Why can't I feel you? Where are you? I keep calling out, and all that happens in the book, because that is real life. We do reach out, and we do say, God has left me, and He isn't with me, and I don't feel Him. And then you come to the realization afterwards that He didn't leave you. It's just you shut the door on Him. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
Because
I think that's exactly true. I wonder if that has anything to do with me, when I was looking for Him for the first 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't find Him. I don't know. I think that I was looking for Him. Honestly, I think I was looking for Him to save me from that situation that I was in, save me from the family that I was born into, save me from all this pain and stuff, right? And then He never did. I was really angry, so I thought, well, I'm not going to believe in that, right? It's just not there. It's just not there. But when I looked within, and I started figuring out who I was, and I started saving myself, He started showing up. But it wasn't until I was in here, and I started doing these things, making these positive shifts for myself, did I start to feel Him. That's very interesting. That's a new perspective for me. It's a completely new perspective for me. I never even thought of it like that. But yeah, it wasn't until I started really doing things about me, for me, because of me, did God show up for me.
Yeah, because sometimes you see, when we are so focused on everything outside, like, I am feeling all this pain, and you focus on all the bad things, and you focus on all the external impacts that are on your life, that sometimes you forget one very important point. The fact is that there's something that is in you that is always with you, and there's something all around you, and you can see it. It's just that we don't want to see it. And when you start saying, I can't find God, and I'm looking here and I'm looking there, and nothing echoes in me, and I don't connect to anything. I can go to this church, I can go to that church, but it doesn't feel it. I'm looking at all these people, and they seem so happy, and I see them singing, and I see them looking so smiley and everything. And why is that not happening to me? Why am I not feeling any joy? Why is this not connecting to me? Maybe did you ever stop to think for a minute that maybe it is in you, it's just that you don't want to release it, and that's when it comes out. Because with me, that is what happened, because I didn't lose the connection. What I did was that I blocked off everything else. I blocked off the fact that what I have known my whole life through and I should have known through my illness, when my body was so ill, that there is something there. It's just that when the pain came, and when, everything from outside came, I let go of the hand that was holding mine. Even though the hand was still there, I didn't want to take it. Because to me, it was like, you put me through so much already, and this is too much for me, and all I feel is pain, and I don't want to be in pain, and I don't want to lose this person, and I don't want to go through this, and this is too much, because all I feel is hurt inside, and I feel lost, and I feel emptiness. I don't want to feel this. Right. And that is what we go through.
Right. Well, Phyllis, Cindy, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this, because I think it's important for people to understand not only that they're not alone, I think that's very important, but there's a process that needs to be gone through, right? Steps that we need to walk through. But I think that acknowledging where we are, finding appreciation for where we are, and finding appreciation for, I'm acknowledging this, and I appreciate it telling me this is the information I'm getting, but moving on from that and saying, but I'm not going to stay here, right? I'm going to choose something different.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Well, I just thank you so much. And if people wanted to get a hold of your book, where would they start to look?
It's available on Amazon.com and also Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
And it's called Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. Run into the Fire, Discover Me in the Ashes by Faye Allion.
So that's just one book, or is it two?
It's one book.
One book. Okay. Well, thank you again so very much, and I will go ahead and put this in the descriptions so that people can reach out to you. And do you have a website?
Yeah, it's called Allion.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is there any last minute thing that you would like to say and share?
We should never let life experiences or other people dictate or regulate what our expectation of life is, or what our expectation of ourselves are. Because very often we let everything from the outside cloud what we are and who we are. And we have to realize that we go through things in life not because it is there just to pressure us, but like every time we go through something in life, it is there to help us. And there are advantages in everything that you've gone through, because you would not be here where you are right now if for not things that had happened before. And it is important to realize that you have value, and you are more, you are never less. And that once you have faith and you believe in yourself, and having faith is a very simple thing. Just go outside and look at the sun. I mean, feel the breeze on feel the air on your skin. If that is present, faith is present. And that is just one little drop, one little sight, one little feel of the air. Even if every breath you take, let that be a reminder that there is faith and you can believe in yourself.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I hope that you really have a nice day today, and I appreciate you being on this podcast.
Okay, thank you very much, Lesley. It was very nice being with you.
Take care.
Bye.